The 8 hours you spend asleep are not empty hours. They are not a pause in the story of your health. They are the hours when the most critical maintenance work of your entire biological system is scheduled to happen. And what that maintenance work accomplishes, what gets repaired and what gets left behind, what arterial wall gets restored and what endothelial lesion is allowed to accumulate another night of unchecked damage, is shaped in ways that most people never consider by something as ordinary and as overlooked as what you ate in the 2 hours before you closed your eyes. Not what you ate all day, not whether your overall diet is generally healthy. The 2 hours before sleep. That specific window. Because the foods that enter your bloodstream in those final evening hours are the supplies the night shift receives before the building goes quiet and the repair work begins. And when the supplies are the wrong ones or when the right ones are absent, the night shift operates with whatever is available, which is never the same as what the work specifically requires. Blood vessel health after 60 is decided largely in the dark, in the quiet hours between midnight and 4 in the morning, when endothelial cells are replacing damaged sections of vessel wall, when the lipid composition of arterial membranes is being renewed, when the nitric oxide pathways that govern how wide or how narrow every artery in your body remains are being either maintained or allowed to degrade, the raw materials for all of that work come from the most recent nutritional input the bloodstream received. If that input was a bowl of chips at 9 o'clock or a glass of wine before bed, the endothelial repair crew is working with inflammatory byproducts and blood sugar destabilized tissue. If that input was strategically chosen for the specific molecular needs of overnight vascular maintenance, the crew has what it needs, and the difference in the quality of what they build compounds across every night, adding up over months and years into the state of the vascular system that determines how well the heart, the legs, the brain, and every other blood supply-dependent organ in the body functions as the decades progress. If this is the conversation you want more of, hit like and subscribe right now. This channel, Dr. Victor Lang, was built on the principle that the most powerful health interventions are often the most specific ones. And what we are about to cover is as specific as health information gets. Let us begin with the most fundamental concept behind all of this, because the evening vascular window is not just a marketing idea dressed in science. It has a documented biological basis in the way the endothelium, the thin inner lining of every blood vessel, operates on a circadian schedule. Research in chronobiology, the science of how the body's functions are timed to specific windows of the day and night, has established that endothelial progenitor cells, the stem-like cells that are mobilized to repair sites of arterial wall damage, circulate in their highest concentrations in the early morning hours following overnight recovery sleep. This morning mobilization peak corresponds with the growth hormone surge of deep sleep and with the resolution of the overnight inflammatory processes that identify repair targets. For this morning mobilization to be most effective, for the repair cells to arrive at the vessel wall with the biochemical tools they need to complete the repair, the substrates for those tools need to have been loaded into the system during the previous evening. Nitric oxide precursors, antioxidant compounds, specific fatty acids for membrane reconstruction, polyphenols that modulate the inflammatory environment in which the repair is taking place. These are not concepts. They are the actual molecular requirements of the overnight vascular repair process, and the foods that supply them in the pre-sleep window are the foods this video is going to name, explain, and make practical. The first food in this framework is one that produces one of the most direct and most immediately measurable vascular effects of any commonly available food, and it operates through a mechanism so specific that it essentially bypasses the problem of impaired endothelial function that affects most adults over 60. It is beetroot, specifically small amounts of beetroot juice, or a cooked beet serving consumed 3 to 4 hours before sleep. The mechanism involves inorganic nitrates present in beets at concentrations among the highest of any food, which are converted through a non-enzymatic chemical pathway in the body to nitric oxide. This pathway, called the nitrate-nitrite-nitric oxide pathway, does not require the endothelial cells that normally produce nitric oxide to be functioning properly. It operates through salivary bacteria that convert nitrate to nitrite, and then through the acidic environment of the stomach that converts nitrite to nitric oxide directly in the bloodstream. For people whose endothelial nitric oxide synthase, The enzyme that produces nitric oxide in the vessel wall has been compromised by age-related endothelial damage. Dietary nitrate offers a completely independent route to the nitric oxide supply that keeps arterial walls relaxed and blood flowing freely. Research from the Inorganic Nitrate Research Group at the University of Exeter established that peak plasma nitrite levels, the measurable marker of the dietary nitrate conversion, occur approximately 2 to 3 hours after consumption and remain elevated for up to 6 hours. Consuming dietary nitrate in the early to mid-evening positions peak nitric oxide availability to coincide with the early overnight sleep hours when vascular maintenance processes are most active. The practical preparation is a small glass of unsweetened beet juice, roughly 4 to 8 ounces, or a serving of roasted or steamed beets consumed at the evening meal or shortly after, 3 to 4 hours before intended sleep time. The second food in this framework is one that specifically addresses the structural side of arterial health rather than the functional vasodilatory side, and it is one that the research on arterial wall composition has singled out as having a unique profile among commonly consumed foods. It is a small handful of mixed nuts, particularly a combination that includes almonds, Brazil nuts, and walnuts in roughly equal proportions. Each of these contributes something specific and non-redundant to the overnight vascular maintenance supply run. Almonds are among the highest food sources of vitamin E in the tocopherol form, and alpha-tocopherol has a specific protective role in the arterial wall as a membrane-embedded antioxidant that prevents the oxidation of the polyunsaturated fatty acids in endothelial cell membranes. Oxidized membrane lipids are one of the primary initiating events in the inflammatory cascade that leads to arterial plaque formation, and vitamin E's presence in the membrane provides in situ protection against this oxidation precisely where it is most damaging. Brazil nuts, consumed in small quantities, specifically 1 to 2 per day, provide selenium in a bioavailable organic form that supports the activity of glutathione peroxidase, the body's own primary enzymatic antioxidant defense system in vascular tissue. Selenium-dependent glutathione peroxidase is one of the most important defenses the arterial wall has against the hydrogen peroxide and lipid peroxides generated by inflammatory activity in atherosclerotic lesions. Walnuts contribute alpha-linolenic acid, the plant omega-3 fatty acid that is incorporated into endothelial cell membranes and that influences their inflammatory signaling properties in the direction of reduced cytokine production and improved vascular function. The 3-nut combination in a small evening serving, roughly 1 ounce total, delivers all 3 of these distinct and complementary vascular support mechanisms in a compact, practical form that requires no preparation and produces no significant glycemic response. The third food addresses something that most discussions of pre-sleep nutrition and blood flow never mention, which is the specific role of overnight protein supply in the maintenance of the extracellular matrix of the arterial wall. Collagen and elastin, the structural proteins that give the arterial wall its tensile strength and its elasticity, are continuously being broken down and rebuilt in a dynamic equilibrium that, when it shifts toward net breakdown, produces the arterial stiffness and loss of compliance that is one of the primary markers of vascular aging. The rate of collagen and elastin synthesis depends on the availability of the amino acid building blocks, particularly glycine, proline, and hydroxyproline, that form the triple helix structure of collagen molecules. A small serving of Greek yogurt consumed in the evening, roughly half a cup of full-fat, unsweetened Greek yogurt, provides casein protein, the slow-digesting dairy protein that releases amino acids gradually over 5 to 7 hours, providing a sustained supply of the amino acid substrates for connective tissue synthesis through the early overnight hours when the synthesis rates are highest. The calcium in Greek yogurt adds a second benefit specific to vascular health in the context we have already discussed as an activating cofactor for endothelial nitric oxide synthase, and the small amount of naturally occurring melatonin precursors in the tryptophan content of dairy contributes to the melatonin environment that governs both sleep depth and the overnight vascular antioxidant protection that melatonin provides through its receptor-independent radical scavenging activity in the arterial wall. The fourth food in this framework is one whose overnight vascular effects operate through the gut microbiome in a way that is specific to the pre-sleep timing, and that becomes more significant the more consistently it is practiced. It is a small serving of a fermented food, specifically unsweetened kefir, plain fermented yogurt with live cultures, or a small amount of kimchi or sauerkraut consumed early in the evening. The connection between the gut microbiome and cardiovascular health has become one of the most productive areas of research in vascular medicine over the past decade, with the recognition that the short-chain fatty acids produced by beneficial gut bacteria from dietary fiber fermentation have direct effects on endothelial function, arterial inflammation, and blood pressure regulation. Specifically, butyrate produced from gut bacterial fermentation activates GPR41 and GPR43 receptors in the arterial wall and in the peripheral nervous system in ways that reduce renin secretion and sympathetic nervous system tone, producing a mild but real blood pressure lowering effect through mechanisms that are completely independent of the nitric oxide pathway. The overnight fermentation cycle of the gut microbiome, which intensifies during the low-activity overnight fasting period, when gut transit slows and bacterial fermentation becomes the dominant metabolic activity of the gut, produces its most significant butyrate output during the early morning hours. Consuming fermented foods that introduce and support the beneficial bacterial species responsible for butyrate production in the evening positions the microbiome for an overnight fermentation cycle that is as butyrate productive as possible, maximizing the overnight endothelial and blood pressure regulatory effects that come from this microbiome cardiovascular axis. The fifth food for the pre-sleep vascular window is one that addresses a mechanism completely separate from all the others we have discussed, and it involves the specific problem of overnight blood viscosity, meaning how thick or thin the blood is during the hours when circulatory movement is slowest and when the risk of sluggish flow and microclot formation in the smallest vessels is highest. Blood viscosity is influenced by hydration status, by the concentration of fibrinogen and other coagulation proteins in the plasma, and by the flexibility of red blood cells as they squeeze through capillaries with diameters smaller than the cells themselves. A small amount of dark chocolate with high cacao content, specifically a 1-ounce serving of at least 70% cacao chocolate consumed in the hour before sleep, has documented effects on platelet aggregation and blood viscosity through the flavanol compounds in cocoa. Cocoa flavanols, specifically epicatechin and its metabolites, inhibit the aggregation of platelets through a mechanism involving the reduction of thromboxane A2 production and the enhancement of prostacyclin production, shifting the balance between these two competing platelet regulatory signals in the direction of reduced clumping. The antiplatelet effect of cocoa flavanols has been measured in human studies, specifically examining the overnight period after evening cocoa consumption, and has been found to persist for several hours into the sleep period, reducing the overnight blood viscosity and microplatelet activity that can impair circulation through the smallest capillaries. The specific pre-sleep consumption timing of dark chocolate maximizes the duration of its antiplatelet effects across the overnight low-activity period when this effect is most relevant. A 1-ounce serving provides this vascular benefit while staying well within the caloric and glycemic parameters that are appropriate for a pre-sleep food. Bringing all 5 of these foods together into a practical evening routine does not require consuming everything listed every single night. It requires building a consistent pattern that rotates through these foods regularly enough to deliver all 5 mechanisms to the vascular system across the course of each week. A Monday, Wednesday, Friday pattern of beet juice consumption. In the early evening covers the nitric oxide independent nitrate pathway on those days. A nightly small handful of mixed nuts covers the vitamin E, selenium, and alpha-linolenic acid membrane support. Greek yogurt 2 or 3 evenings per week covers the slow-release amino acid substrate for connective tissue synthesis and the calcium ENOS cofactor. A fermented food serving 3 to 4 evenings per week covers the microbiome butyrate pathway, and a square or 2 of 70% cacao dark chocolate as an occasional evening treat covers the platelet aggregation reduction and blood viscosity benefit without becoming a nightly sugar and fat load. The compounding effect of this kind of consistent, targeted pre-sleep nutritional investment on vascular health is not invisible. It is measurable in endothelial function assessments that show improvement with regular consumption of flavanol-rich and nitrate-rich foods. It is measurable in blood pressure readings that trend lower over weeks of dietary nitrate and gut microbiome butyrate support. It is measurable in blood viscosity and platelet aggregation markers that reflect the real biochemical impact of the cocoa flavonols and omega-3 fatty acids that have been incorporated into the vascular system night after night. These are not dramatic overnight transformations. They are the quiet, consistent, directional changes that accumulate into the state of the vascular system that either carries people through their 70s and 80s with strength and capability or progressively limits them in ways they attribute entirely to age. The truth that connects all of this is one that the most meaningful health information always points toward eventually. The body is not a machine that runs down on a fixed schedule. It is a system that responds continuously to its inputs, rebuilds itself from the materials it is given, and expresses in its health outcomes the accumulated quality of the choices made on its behalf over thousands of ordinary days and ordinary evenings. The overnight hours are not empty. They are working. And the pre-sleep window is the last chance you have each day to make sure the work they do is supported by the specific materials it requires. That window belongs to you, and it has been waiting every night for you to use it deliberately. Tell me in the comments which of these 5 foods surprised you the most and which one you are going to incorporate into your evenings first. Tell me if you have already been using any of them and whether you have noticed anything that might be connected to the mechanisms we discussed today. The conversation in the comments section here is one of the most valuable things about this community, and your specific experience helps the people who come after you understand what real-world practice looks like beyond the science. Please share this video with someone whose vascular health you care about and who goes to bed every night without knowing that the last 2 hours before sleep are among the most leverageable moments in their entire day for protecting the blood vessels that are keeping them alive. What you give the night determines what the night builds. Give it something worth building with.